Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're going to be diving into a genuinely fascinating and honestly highly esoteric text. It's called A Brief Explanation of Lifechanyuan F Coin, written by an author named Shufeng. Now, whether you're already familiar with this specific ideology or this is your first time hearing about it, we are going to impartially break down the unique cosmology it presents. It's this wild blend of apocalyptic predictions and, well, spiritual currency. The framework here is just incredibly structured. So let's jump right in and map out this vision. The text actually kicks off with a pretty massive, startling claim: 600 million. According to Shufeng, the Earth is facing this impending cosmic shift, and because of it, the surviving human population might soon drop below this 600 million mark. I mean, to put that into perspective, that is a tiny fraction of our current global population. And the text doesn't just treat this as some vague possibility, it presents it as a fast-approaching reality that we literally need to prepare for. But what actually causes a drop like that? Well, that brings us to Section 1, the spiritual wealth divide. This impending apocalyptic bottleneck, it's not just random. It's driven by a stark divide in how humans live. The core conflict boils down to this: material wealth on one side and spiritual wealth on the other. The author argues that when our consciousness is totally wrapped up in chasing immediate material benefits, things tied to worldly phenomena and everyday disputes, we're basically being nearsighted. The text actually explicitly says vision is proportional to one's prospects. Nearsightedness renders the distant future obscure. It views all these material phenomena as totally fleeting. Spiritual and soul wealth, though, that is the essential element here. The exact amount of spiritual wealth you possess is literally the metric that determines if you face destruction or if you make it through this coming population bottleneck. And the ultimate stakes here, they are incredibly binary. If you lack spiritual wealth, the text claims you face destruction. But, and this is key, in this belief system, destruction doesn't just mean a fade to black or ceasing to exist. It specifically means reincarnating in the animal world. On the flip side, survival, which you get by having high spiritual and soul wealth, allows you to coexist harmoniously with nature and ultimately ascend to the heavenly kingdom. So it's a very clear-cut outcome, and it's based entirely on your internal spiritual ledger. So how exactly does the universe manage this massive sorting process? Let's look at Section 2, Earth's population bottleneck. To really grasp this, we have to look at the author's grand scale of time. According to the text, nature is managed by these advanced beings, and everything runs on strict laws. Now, surprisingly, the Earth itself actually has a 5 billion-year lifespan remaining. It's not going anywhere until it hits what the text calls the long axis of the Taiji ellipsoid. So the physical end of the planet? Way, way off. But in our current era, to make sure the Earth stays healthy for those remaining 5 billion years, these advanced beings need to remove what they view as tumors from the population. That's the bottleneck event we're talking about. And for those who survive, over the next 1,000 years, humanity transitions into a 1,000-year world. The criteria for surviving this bottleneck are pretty strict. Basically, only a consciousness that is totally detached from worldly, fleeting phenomena actually possesses the attributes of these advanced beings. The source material claims that human behavior is completely controlled by consciousness, and that consciousness is influenced by the vast universe. Long story short, if your mind is entirely tied up in the material world, well, you just don't make the cut. Which naturally leads us to probably the most critical question in the text. In this future, the people who remain on Earth will be the wealthy ones. But, not wealthy in cash or real estate, wealthy in spirit. But how do we even define that? Who exactly are the wealthy in terms of spiritual and soul wealth? And maybe more importantly, how on earth is that measured? To answer that, Shufeng introduces a highly specific conceptual artifact. Let's get into Section 3, introducing the F Coin. Enter the Lifechanyuan F Coin. Now, right off the bat, it's absolutely crucial to understand that this isn't physical money. You aren't sticking this in your wallet. Instead, it functions as a direct indicator. The exact amount of F coins you possess signifies the exact amount of spiritual and soul wealth you have. Basically, the more F coins you have, the closer you are to being considered wealthy by the advanced beings managing the planet. You can kind of think of the F coin as a cosmic VIP pass. As you accumulate these F coins, it acts as a stepping stone. First, it makes it easier to enter the human paradise, which the text calls the second home. And from there, if you successfully accumulate enough, it grants you entry all the way up into the primary paradise, the 1,000-year world. It's a very clear, step-by-step progression, mapping this spiritual currency directly to your ultimate salvation. So, what exactly makes up this conceptual currency? Let's break it down in Section 4, Anatomy of the Coin. The author actually doesn't leave the design up to your imagination at all. The source material explicitly mandates exactly 11 distinct components that are embedded into the F coin. And as you'll see in a second, they blend grand cosmic theology with, well, some startlingly corporate bureaucracy.
Okay, so the first 6 components are this fascinating mix. It starts with high-minded ideals, the purpose being to revere God, life, and nature. Then it includes portraits of major spiritual guides like Jesus, Buddha, and Lao Tzu. But then it takes a bit of a pivot. To validate your spiritual wealth, the coin actually requires a photograph of the founder himself, Shuifeng, right alongside the logo for their second home lifestyle, plus the actual numerical value of the coin. And the remaining components really double down on this highly structured design. Your heavenly wealth requires an institutional logo, a specific oath, and it has to be explicitly labeled as heavenly wealth. But honestly, the most surprising part is that it operates almost like a metaphysical ID card. It literally requires a unique serial number and the owner's specific name or code superimposed right over a flat map of the Earth. It's wildly specific. So, with all 11 components of the F coin laid out, what is the end result for the believer? Let's head into our final section, Section 5, the ultimate destination. The author makes a pretty striking promise here. According to the text, when you successfully possess the F coin, a divine lamp will rise in your heart. And the text insists this isn't just some poetic metaphor for feeling good. This lamp is meant to literally illuminate your path forward, through the darkness of that looming population bottleneck. If you follow this light, Feng promises you will reach your absolute ultimate dream destination. But to make sure you actually reach that destination, Feng issues this uncompromising, honestly pretty provocative instruction about the material world you're leaving behind. The text explicitly says, "Remember, let the dead deal with the affairs of the dead." I mean, wow. That perfectly encapsulates the absolute demand for detachment in this cosmology. You simply cannot carry the baggage, the disputes, or the nearsightedness of the material world into the thousand-year world. You literally have to leave it all behind. And that brings us to the end of our explainer. Feng actually closes the original text by wishing that the reader becomes a super wealthy individual in terms of spiritual and soul wealth. It really leaves us looking at the very foundation of how we value our time and energy, doesn't it? If you truly believed, as this text posits, that the material world is fleeting and this massive cosmic sorting event is right on the horizon, where would you place your value? In a world facing impending destruction, would you keep investing in material wealth? Or would you seek out the Lifechanyuan F Coin? It's definitely a fascinating framework to ponder. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and keep exploring.